touch base here about safety things too, because I never, you know what, I'm probably gonna make this into like a two-part little series. So as an as an equipment operator, you got stuff to be careful about. Like this is an exceptional example. So you got a garbage bin. I don't know what that chain link thing is. You got all those steel posts, you got walls. So when you're coming into something like this, it doesn't look bad at all until you gotta start backing up. That's where this gets a little interesting. The reason I say why this gets interesting is because in this stuff in here, because like right now I'm on an off-camber like slant. But when you're backing up, like I only have the one camera hooked up. But you'll see you should be able to see as we're coming through here some of the obstacles. When you're going forward, it's one thing. When you're going backwards, it's another. And any of you who ran equipment know exactly what I mean. Like, driving forward's always a lot easier. Always. Might not seem like it until you try to go backwards, and then you realize it is a lot easier. So, the other weekend there, muffler delete was bugging me about this whole 10-point thing in bins. Or if there's, you know, whatever, points for bins. There's a bin right there, muffler, if you watch this. I ain't budging it, but I can fit in my bucket. Ain't no points for that one. Come on. I like using the float when I'm backplaning, and because of being in a track machine, even tire, you know, I see guys, so many people running their equipment on two wheels all the time, or on the final drives of their track versions. And you know what? There is absolutely no need for it. It is not beneficial. If anybody tells you it's beneficial, it's not. And some people may argue this fact, but the thing is, when you're pushing or you're pulling, is that if you know how, if you have a decent cutter bar and you know like roughly what angle your bucket should be at when you're pushing, when you have your tracks flat or your two tires flat on the ground, it depends what your machine is. Now, in theory, you would think, you know, having all that pressure in your bucket is going to, you know, rip, rock, and roll. It's going to cut. It's going to do all these amazing things for you when you're trying to cut through snow or ice. You know, I hate to give that operator the bad news, or the owner of that piece of equipment. If you have a half decent cutter bar on your piece of equipment and you keep the tires flat or your tracks flat at roughly a 30 to 45 degree-ish angle on your bucket, will cut very good, and it's less apt to polish the ice or you know, polish the snow, hardened snow, whatever. It's less apt to turn it into something ridiculously slippery. It still does, but it's not as bad. But where I'm trying to go with this, the benefit of keeping your tires on the ground and your tracks flat is you have ultimate traction. Like, you have as much traction as you can possibly have, and your bucket is at a fairly optimal angle for actually cutting. You still can, at the end of the day, your bucket straight up and down usually works really, really good. But it is a lot harder on the machine. It's not guaranteed it's going to cut as well. A number of years ago, I actually broke a Z linkage off the loader. It was like tonight type of cold, like this minus you know, like minus 35, minus 40, whatever we're at now with the wind chill. I don't know what we're at. I haven't looked at the weather in a bit, but it's she's a cold one, folks. Here, you know what? Let's tilt this down a bit so you actually see what happens when you're back plating here. I'm just trying to pull this stuff a little further away from the building. So again, you don't need to have your bucket straight up and down. It does work, but you don't necessarily need it per se to do it that way. I find if you go straight up and down, it leaves like these little windrows a lot more, like that one right there. If you have it curled back a little bit, it's like it feathers it out and thins it right out. If you're cutting a surface, you can cut a surface actually with the float. Again, it depends on your cutter bar and bucket angles. So you get started right up on this hill, and we actually make that bridge a little worse. So I'm going to try illustrating this really quick. Like say, it's too cold to leave a camera outside. And my other camera's actually, when I check the battery, it's dead. So we're going to do a rough we'll call that's about 45-ish. Okay, I'm picking up the tracks. The tracks are way off the ground. I'm right on my finals. Now let's see what happens. There. You see, I'm not steering it, it's wanting to drift over to that side on its own. Let's see how this cut. Didn't cut it much different than anything else. You guys are seeing this as I'm seeing this, exactly as I'm seeing it. So let's try the same bucket angle. No float, keep the tracks flat. Okay. Now let's see. Just a little bit of pressure only on the bucket. Floating around, it's not drifting around. That's what happens when you leave your tracks, your tires flat. They'll still want, like, depends what you're doing, they'll still want to drift around. Like right there, I didn't even see that speed bump. It was drifting a little to the left. So it will still want to drift, but let's see. Did it cut any different? Like, I'm not sure how this cutter bar is. Yeah, you can. Oh yeah, there's the speed bump. Speed bump's clean. No, for all in all, it looks pretty darn close to the same. There's also, I'm seeing ice underneath this too, which, being on a skid steer, it doesn't have the weight to cut through it. If it had a brand new cutter bar, it should be able to just rip through that. And again, I'm also on an off-camber slanting too. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let's do it with the float on, tracks flat, and let's go straight up and down, or pretty darn close straight up and down. You see how that's chattering? So now if you look at the ground, it is doing a way better job at breaking everything loose. But it's also leaving, every time that bucket chatters, it leaves those grooves in the snow, almost like washboard. I'm controlling the machine totally. I'm not trying to push specifically left, importance of angles of your bucket, how you have your tires or your tracks on the ground, like as far as flat, or if you're up on your heel. The only thing is with track machines, they like to chatter a lot, track movements. So it makes a bunch of shaking and noise. So but that, yeah, that's it in a nutshell anyways. I got a list of stuff to do, but yeah, so bucket angles, like I was saying there, like doing this stuff, it's just, you know what, again, like, I guess it depends on your situation. If you're doing it for yourself, for a company, what your customer also requires, right? This back area is sketchy sometimes in a loader because, man, this off-camber hill or parking lot, like I say, it gets kind of sketchy because your machine wants to slide that direction. So let's slow down for the speed bump this time. Tires over tracks for doing snow. I prefer tracks overall for anything, but tracks and tires do have their place. Tracks are nice when you're doing like leveling soil and stuff. I much prefer tracks. It's not just the footprint, but when you're backblading, when you're grading, the machine sits more true. With a tire version, if you get a ripple in your material, your machine will start riding that ripple, and anything you're trying to do is going to get worse. Like the bumps just get worse as you're spreading the material, whatever, going forward and whatnot. That's where the tracks are nice. Traction wise, they're, you know what, they're nice too. Like I've ran dozer, loader, skink, excavator, long reach excavator, stubby excavator, like little short reach, like all sorts of equipment. But I haven't done much in the way of landscaping and stuff, so I mean, I'm definitely not a pro when it comes to trying to lay out like soil or doing like proper grading. I've done grading the redneck way with the naked eye, and I've laid gravel out the same way, soil the same way. But if you're wanting to do it properly, you really should be getting the proper tools to doing it. All my stuff's all been work oriented, scrap yard and stuff like that, where there's really no rules, no laws, so to speak, when it comes to doing stuff like that.